Thank you for coming out. Before I go through the topic today, maybe brief introductions from you gentlemen here.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everybody, my name is Brendan Mannion. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been in the cybersecurity field for about a decade now. I work at a company called Clutch Security. It's a new startup based in Tel Aviv, Israel. We focus on non-human identity. It's been a long time existing problem, and there's been a few breaches that have occurred recently, and now companies are stepping up to the plate to help try and solve it. And it seemed like a great opportunity, so I had a run at it. I'm at Clutch Security, living in Charlotte, and it's great to be here and talk to all of you today.
Hey, I'm Brian Kirk. I've been in IT for the last 30 years and I look like it. That's what it'll do to your hair. I work for a company called Strata Information Group. We have a commercial brand called Cybersecurity. We do strategic consulting, penetration testing, assessments, PCI work, all of those types of things. And one of the things that kind of differentiates us, we don't really sell any products or anything like that. So a lot of times we're giving recommendations and helping companies kind of determine what the best strategic platform from a security perspective is.
Great. Hey everyone, Steve Thomas. I'm the founder and CEO of Hack Notice. I've been in threat intelligence for about 20 years now. Serial entrepreneur, built a threat intelligence company about 15 years ago. I helped bootstrap other companies like Security Scorecard with Ali here. So background is largely in threat intelligence, and that's what Hack Notice does. We keep track of every ransomware gang on the planet, every victim in real time. We alert our clients to it so they can do incident response, protect themselves from being the next domino.
I'm Gary Moore. I've been in cybersecurity and information security for a little over 20 years now, mostly in LFIs. I work for First Citizens Bank now, and I am responsible for the data protection program, which includes data at RaaS, masking, vulnerability management. Happy to be here and looking forward to the conversations and engagement.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And thank you for your sponsorship, Brennan, Steve. There's one more sponsor. Ephraim, you're a sponsor. If you want to just quick introduction of your company.
Yeah, I'm Gonzalez, President and CEO of Tech Refresh. Known this cast of characters for many years. We're a full MSSP, operate across the country.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get kicked off. We're going to talk about a very specific topic today, but I think it's very relevant into your daily jobs if you're a cybersecurity professional. So the first thing is one that we already know about. It's ransomware as a service, right? Now I don't have to produce my own strain of malware. I can buy it on a portal. I can get different service level agreements if I pay more in terms of the efficacy of the ransomware, like an affiliate program. I buy it, and it even has a little tracker for me. I can pay for it as little as $50 to $100 a month. It's kind of like buying a car, no money down. They actually have an affiliate model. They take a cut. And if you can provide the initial access into a network, they'll conduct the ransomware negotiation on your behalf. So it's like the easy button for ransomware, right? This is a very sophisticated organization. There's very little cost of entry to get into ransomware as a service. The hard part has always been initial access. How do I get the foothold in the organization, whether it's credentials, a cookie session, a VPN, you name it? Well, turns out now initial access brokers are a thing too. I can spend $50 or zero money down, I'll pay you on the back end. I can now buy access to a network anywhere from $100 to $200. So you put those together and you have the perfect storm of what's going on right now. Those of us in cybersecurity see it on a weekly basis, especially with identity. That's where the majority of the threats are coming. So some questions to get started. How can organizations proactively identify and mitigate vulnerabilities as initial access brokers? Focus on network security hygiene as it relates to ransomware and access control. We didn't point these for anybody, so whoever would like to kick it off. Ready? You'll bite, right?
Yeah, I'll bite. So, I mean, clearly there's the paid for services like Tenable, Rapid7, the tools that are out there. If you're a critical infrastructure or if you are also a government agency, you can sign up with CISA and they'll do free vulnerability scanning for you. I'm a big fan of free. I'm just a cheap person overall. But they'll do it for you monthly. They'll notify you of changes associated with it. If you can't afford that, or if you're not qualified based on your profile, there's some free options out there that you can use. And there's some paid options with those things like Shodan and Census as well, where you can actually subscribe to those and they'll notify you of any changes. So if somebody misconfigures a firewall or if somebody opens a port, they didn't run it through change management and security wasn't aware of it, you can get proactive notifications from that perspective. So just from a network hygiene perspective, which is what you were asking about, these are just a handful of things that we see customers and advise customers to look into.
That won't break the bank either. Anybody else want to chime in on this one?
Ali, one thing I'll say, just
Yep.
piggyback off of what he
Yep.
said, if you're in critical infrastructure, there's the South Carolina Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity Program that'll do some of those services for free for you as well. It's taxpayer funded, doesn't cost you anything. You just have to be in critical infrastructure. So there's really no reason not to sign up for it if you have, other than if you just don't have time to provide them the information. But they do a lot of other things, ransom notice, vulnerability scanning, and they have a task force of several federal agencies that they can talk with and get involved probably quicker than you could on your own, unless you're a bank. So, yeah, really no reason not to sign up for that if you're in critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure cybersecurity program. It's a division of SLED. but-
That's a great resource
Yeah,
for
that's
free. Any others before we?
Yeah, we spend all of our time looking at all the ransomware gangs, their tactics, techniques, and procedures. And if you look at the top gangs last year, we're talking about Akira, Ransom Hub, Lockbits, a lot of names that you would recognize. The ways they get in are almost identical. They all use CVE exploitation as one of the main ways of getting in addition to credential stuffing and phishing. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that ransomware gangs are going after the low-hanging fruit. And I think that just points out how critical it is to take a look at your publicly facing infrastructure and know that if you have known CVEs, like that's a target for every ransomware gang on the planet, even if you don't think you are a target.
Yeah, talking about CVEs, there's a massive scanning campaign going on right now for Palo Alto Global Protect VPN, and they're saying that type of massive scanning happens usually like 2 weeks before a major CVE will come out. So if you're running Palo Alto Global Protect, be on the look out for a pretty bad CVE in the next couple of weeks.
That's a good leading indicator too. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
Have you seen any increases in ransomware deployment via some of the newer social engineering techniques like click fix, or fake updates, any of that stuff?
We see phishing and spear phishing as just a prominent vector. Sadly, that says that it's not a sophisticated attack. It still works, right? People are often the weak link, and you don't really need a deep fake to convince people. You can just send them an interesting email with a link. What we've seen from last year is that phishing works, and we need to be prepared for employees to click that link. I think it'd be fascinating to see AI and the uses, and I think we'll see it this year. But just run-of-the-mill phishing is still working.
Cool. Yeah, great points. Any RDP experts? I'm not one, but obviously that's the precursor of almost every identity foothold, right? We should never have that publicly exposed. TeamViewer, please don't expose that to the internet, right?
I just would like to add that we do focus on CVs, and that's super important. Obviously, it's the number one vector that they see. But when you're looking at your footprint on a regular basis, probably an annual basis, you really need to be looking at everything that's exposed and see whether or not it really needs to be exposed. Just because there's not a CVE associated with it doesn't mean there's not a vulnerability we don't know about. A lot of things just hang out there that somebody stood up years ago that's not showing up on a vulnerability scan, but doesn't need to be there anymore. Or it could be hidden behind a VPN. So just evaluating your overall footprint is a great idea.
And this wasn't on the script, so I'm going to throw a curveball. Now, it just made me think about it, right? So CVEs and the CVS scoring, right? There's that, and now we're talking about more about exploitability. It might not be a high CVSS score, but now we're seeing more of the EPS scoring. I don't know if you guys have been watching that framework. If anybody wants to comment on EPSS, you can look at both in conjunction, right? Just because it's low critical, it might be relevant to your organization, right?
Yeah, we're always evaluating that. That's a part of our DNA in terms of how we look at those things and evaluate the risk associated to it as well, and just really make decisions based off that.
Contextual to your company, right? Yeah. Okay, great stuff. How about, we know a lot of us are security service providers, or some of us work in some big companies. Met somebody from Cap One out here, like they got all the tools in the world, or they'll build them, right? So what about SMBs, right? Like that's the big thing. Like recently CSA has some good published guidance on how to defend against, have zero trust environment, right? So what about for SMB with limited resources? How can they improve network security hygiene, manage compromised credentials like the session, cookie theft, What are some good SMB ideas?
I think the first thing is finding a great partner like Tech Refresh to partner with. Ultimately, when you're in the SMB space, you need to have good partners that are going to guide you in the right realm. Maybe you don't have the budget to buy the most expensive things. Maybe you're not going to go E5 with Microsoft or buy the Falcon Complete protection platform, right? There's lots of great tools out there. There's even open source tools. Large enterprises are even using. Find ways to find success there. And if you need to scale up and need 24/7 service, find a great SOC as a service solution or managed detection response that can help you out. This goes for both enterprises and small and medium business. At the end of the day, people are going to be your weakest link to finding a way inside an environment. Like really focus in on great ways. Like make it security training fun and exciting. When you're doing phishing simulation, whenever I catch a fish, I love clicking that hook inside my Gmail and I get congratulations, boom, you caught one. Make it fun and reward your employees on finding things and improving security. I got a great relationship. I got one grandmother left and she's 90 years old. She's super up to speed on all things security. She knows when people are calling her and reaching out. If I'm calling her telling her I want money because I'm in the hospital, that's a click, hang up the phone, right? Like really focus on encouraging your employees to make good, sound security decisions. That's gonna do the best thing for your business.
Awesome. Great advice.
There's no question. We've all been in this long enough. We know the weakest link is the human factor.
Right.
We see it every day. We see people click on them every day. I think there's layers of security we should start putting inside of that so people aren't allowed to do that, or maybe you're not allowed to receive those links. There's lots of ways to filter things out like that. I do think following certain best practices around this for SMBs, adopt a cybersecurity framework and say, I'm going to follow this to the T. And I do think those type of foundational pieces are missing a lot, quite frankly. I mean, we deviate from it all the time, so try to stay true to those frameworks. I do think it's a recipe for a high level of success.
And just to pile on what Gary's saying, I do think that SMBs, like, you mentioned some of the frameworks like CIS, like it has implementation groups based on the size of your organization. So you start with the implementation group 1. And when you have a limited budget, it's really important to prioritize what you buy. Those types of frameworks really help you identify what tools, like everybody's got a tool to sell, but that'll help you identify what's most important to your business.
No airplane buddy buys, right?
That's right.
See those lots, right? That common.
So I've been running small businesses and startups for about 20 years, and the advantage we all have is cyber's a community. If you need something, ask. If you don't have the budget for it, send an email. I've had security researchers at large firms say, hey, I really need access to your tool. I have $0. Can we work something out? The answer is almost always yes. If you walk around a security conference and you go to a booth and you literally have no budget, ask them how you could still make use of their service. Maybe you could give a testimonial, maybe you could be a reference, but like it's a community, and I think you'll be surprised how many tools you can get access to while you're small, because everyone's betting that you're going to become big and then you'll have a budget. I think that with small budgets, you make a list of what you need, you pay for the things you can, and then you either use open source or just ask. The community would rather have you be secure than not. There's a big advantage to just asking.
Another thing I'll add to that, somebody mentioned they work a lot with MSSPs. Pretty much every tool has what they call NFR license, not for resale. So you can't resell those licenses to your customers, but as an MSSP, you can get access to pretty much any tool for free, so you can get up to speed on the tool and possibly sell it to your customers. You just can't sell those licenses to your customers that you get for free.
Good free tips. Yeah. And then, so we know that MFA in the past, what we thought was, we're golden, right? Nobody's ever getting in. But now, sessions, cookie stealing, that's a thing, right? Any suggestions on, would you maybe shorten the session for
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, if I were doing this, and what we've done in our particular situation is limited the session duration based on where you're accessing.
Gotcha.
If you're hitting confidential,
Yeah.
the session only lasts 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Your users love you.
If you think about the
But it's
people that
great.
need access to that, there needs to be a smaller group of people that have access to that. Not everybody in the firm needs access to that. That's what we've done. We've implemented baseline standards around the sensitivity of the data, how long that session lasts.
Another thing I've seen is like breach passwords get leaked and people change the password like an AD and it syncs to Okta,
Yeah.
but they don't revoke the sessions. Make sure you're revoking the sessions
Good point.
when you get a breach.
That's where a good procedure comes in. You might know to revoke all the sessions, but then you're not there and somebody else on a different shift. So procedures like what you're talking about are really important.
Yeah. And so it's not like scareware. I'm just curious, there's a lot of people in here I've talked to that, are session cookie thefts. Are you seeing it in your day-to-day, in your business as an SP, right? Like, not seeing it? Not so much? Okay.
RMMs.
Yeah.
So a lot of RMM abuse.
Okay. Some of them, but okay. But it's definitely one to keep tabs on.
Let me add one more thought to that. I do a lot of analysis on impact and likelihood, which is why we're all here. And there's a lot of empirical data out there that suggests those sessions have contributed to a lot of breaches. You can look at the data, it's out there. The more you limit that, the reducing the risk comes into play. That's real data.
I would say insurance companies have caught on to that. I have several clients that have not been able to renew their insurance without changing their session timeout value. There are certain things that insurance companies are requiring depending on the level of assurance you want, like EDR, immutable storage, cloud-based backups, and now I've seen session-based.
Good to know. So it's, if you want to get insurance,
Might be coming your way,
coming
no
your
matter
whether
whether
you
you
want
like
it or
it or
not. Right. And so to some of the points, like Nick brought up, some of the, obviously collaborative security communities, but CSA has a lot of research. It's free. Just go to the website, right, and you can download. There's, I don't know the exact number, Andrew, keep me honest. I think it's like 30 working groups. Like what?
44 and
There-
400
there you
plus
go.
publications.
There you go. Find your flavor. If it's dandy access, if it's ransomware protection, there's a working group for it. You can collaborate. It's a platform. You just go to CSA and it's called Circle, and it's real-time collaboration with practitioners across the world, which is for free. And you can do your CERT training for free on there. So it's another great resource. While we're on the topic, I thought it was, Nick brought up a good point when it comes to South Carolina critical infrastructure. What about more of the private-public partnerships? Are there other ones that we should be thinking about? Like you said, reaching out to some organizations, but what are some of the free public or private partnerships that can help cybersecurity from an enablement and awareness perspective?
I already mentioned CISA, which is, they have a lot of resources, even if you're not in critical infrastructure or a government agency, but they have a lot of templates, if you need policies or tabletop templates, things of that nature that are available. In addition to, if you do fall into that, they do a lot more than vulnerability scanning. They'll come do a lot of the assessment services and things like that for you, and you just have to coordinate with them. So we'll see how long it lasts.
For now, it's a good deal.
And critical infrastructure is more than just what you think it is. It's
Livestock.
not just it's not just
16 different groups. I don't know what they
Yeah.
are. That's like healthcare, utilities, all kinds of stuff.
there's a lot of different groups out there, but you probably fall under.
Yeah, manufacturing, I didn't think we would be in it. We're in it, so.
Yeah.
I look at it like in cybersecurity, you said it really well. It's a community, right? South Carolina, you're with Ryan Trusky. I used to work with him when I was at Red Canary. He bought a tabletop exercise, Readiness. He literally distributed it to the entire South Carolina government. And anybody that wanted to see it, they could be involved. And guess what? At Red Canary, we were super excited for that. We wanted more people to hear what we're doing, what we're bringing to the table, and get value from it. And then I look at it from Cloud Security Alliance, ISC2. There's lots of great events, and people are like, most humans have a go-giver mentality, right? Like they want to give more. They want you to learn and be a part of the community and give back. So I think that's a big thing that's involved just in the cybersecurity space.
I think that we in security kind of self-organize better than other industries. Public can be a little slow, right? It's great if there's a public resource that we can use, but there's so many groups. I mean, there's B-side chapters all over, there's ISSA, CSA. I think that if you are looking for resources, I would just look for local and then state and then national resources, and there's probably going to be recorded talks that include resources right after the talk, like whatever you want to learn about or whatever access you need to a resource. Look for who's been presenting about it. More than likely they're sharing additional free access to either tooling, data, or information.
Yeah. Anybody else in the audience, some resources you guys have leveraged, private or public, that are kind of no cost or low cost? In Greenville, there's a lot. Sometimes we do a bad job as security community. Here's CSA, there's DEF CON 864 in Greenville, so there's a lot of communities out there. What we have in our backyard, we don't didn't always think about it. This weekend, right?
Yeah, B-side Charlotte
Full plug.
is Saturday. Like, seems like everything's happening this week or this weekend. I'll be presenting on Saturday about ransomware. The national conference at RSA is end of the month. There's a lot of meetups.
Yeah.
Almost too many. And even if you can't attend, often there's a recording, there's online resources, and those are usually free. Maybe it's behind a paywall, but just go to whoever was speaking. I guarantee it's on their social.
And RSA, B-Sides SF is the 2 days before RSA if you're out there. I've been to probably 20 different B-Sides and it's the best bang for your buck. I mean, they're usually between 20 and 80 bucks, maybe $100 like B-Sides SF, but the content and the information you get is definitely the best bang for your buck you're gonna get out of a conference. So.
I love it. And you said you're in manufacturing. Is that what you said? Yeah. Are there any other manufacturing verticals? Have you guys ever been to the local ISSA in Greenville? So, okay, you guys, we have one of the best resources, Mike Holcomb. We know like that resource that we have in our community. He's one of the top global voices for ICS OT. Some amazing resources in Greenville, right? What about some other open source projects? We talk about passkeys, eliminating the need for passwords that aren't bound to a laptop. FIDO is the standard, and they have free APIs to develop your own. If you can't buy one of these expensive off-the-shelf ones, if you look up FIDO, it's fast and dandy online, and some vendors online would say, hey, use a passkey. It's binding you to that device. So now that credential can't be used anywhere else. I'm just curious, anybody have experience with FIDO? And using that implementation, you mind a couple words on how you got, Yeah.
Every single associate, that's one of their factors.
Gotcha.
So we're 62,000 and everyone is a FIDO key. Failing that, there's bypasses, goes right through the IDP and you're good.
Right.
So it's a good, secure, and simple factor.
And is it in-house? You built it, or?
Just
Okay.
your standard FIDO key.
Oh, a standard FIDO key, YubiKey or something.
Yeah.
And even if you're a small business, you'd at least do it for your super critical. That's right. They're pretty cheap. I know we got a security awareness guru on here. That's what his company does. So it's steered toward you. What about the role of security awareness in training to reduce more as a service, right? Specifically, Credentials, which again, your company, right, specializes in that, and also remote access. Like, what are some things? I mean, you live this every day. How can we get our hygiene? Because there's a lot of free resources. I'm sure you can get in your company. Right?
Yeah, so the bad news is security awareness does not always work. The vast majority, it will not change hearts and minds. We would love there to be a silver bullet where every employee understands that hackers are targeting them, they stop clicking on links. It's just not happening. So we have to build assuming that links are gonna still be clicked. Password reuse continues to happen no matter how much we talk about FIDO or multi-factor. Last year, I think about 1 billion InfoStealer logs were shared, and those were verified logins to maybe not your systems, but LinkedIn and other platforms that can transverse from personal to work. If you can get someone to really understand that they're a target, it's great. You really strengthen your cyber DNA, but you should build assuming that's not going to happen. You need to build a system that limits your exposure, because every employee is going to click that link, download that PDF. They're going to go to that weird website to convert one file to another and get infected. And so we just have to assume that awareness in its current state is not effective.
Free tools online like that are probably free for a reason, right? Yeah.
Well, there was a study on that recently, that there's a lot of drive-by infection sites. They pose as normal sites. Oh, convert a Word doc into whatever, but they'll inject a payload into the converted file.
Nice file like that, right? Any way to make security training less punitive, right? More carrot, less stick, that's the hardest part of it. Any success in running that in your organizations?
I think you got to find a way to make it fun, right? That's really important. Nova4 does a great job from phishing simulation and training. Have that security team make it custom written for the employees. You have those capabilities. Go ahead and do that. Really stress test them. I worked at a company and they used to give out gift cards. It could be $5 to Starbucks. The whole goal is to make it cool that you're not the problem in the organization. You're aware of it. I was at a great burrito place in Charlotte today, and I was paying. It's called Johnny Burritos. If you ever go to Charlotte, that's where you should get a burrito. There was a USB, literally right at the cash register, and it says, please take $50 on Bitcoin. I literally took the picture of it and I just thought it's hilarious. I might post it on LinkedIn, but teach your people, that's a great way to get hacked.
I didn't know that was still a thing. USBs, I guess they are. Still happening.
The organization, the awareness is important without buy-in from your executive. In other words, they won't phishing for everybody else, phishing awareness training for everybody else, but not for them.
Not for them.
I went to the tabletop for
Yeah,
an executive
it's a real
team in
thing.
Fortune 500, and I got permission in advance and sent everybody that was going to participate in the tabletop a phishing email 2 weeks in advance. And that was the actual subject of the tabletop. Somebody clicked on a link, and when I flashed up on the screen the email, that the CEO actually looked at it and said, "Hey, I got that email." And it just all of a sudden became very relevant that they were the most important and most targeted people in the room. That's an anecdote that's probably not easy to scale, but anything you could do to convince them and show them that they're have the largest presence and the most visibility from an attack perspective, like LinkedIn or on the company website, they are the most targeted individuals. So anyone, they should receive the most training and the most stringent.
I should have said caveat without getting fired.
Yeah, that was a risky one. I rolled the dice.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound negative, but anytime you tie it to money, the gift cards is a great idea. We saw some success with that in the previous company I was at. But once we tied the security awareness training to the training portion of their merit increases, participation was made.
Wow.
Go figure, right? Yeah.
We had to work with HR to get that done. You can't just do it yourself as a security team. It's a partnership with HR. But
That's great.
I think once that got done and got communicated and socialized, like our participation rate went way up.
We've made it a part of performance goals.
Yeah.
There's
Show me money.
a threshold that you can hit, and if you do hit that, then your performance reviews are higher than you would be, right? So you bake that into the overall performance review at the end of the year. That's why it's so important that you're tracking the results of these quizzes that we all take. If people are not scoring high enough, they tend to be a higher risk. And so we put additional controls around those that have that.
Another thing is use one that has the quizzes in it. In our organization or a previous organization I was at, people were used to just clicking through the training. There was no quiz. It was just like, did you take it or not? They never even watched it. Then when they had this and they had answers that they had to get right, they actually took it. I don't know if they took it seriously, but they actually had to at least watch the video to get the answer correct.
Yeah.
To get their increase.
Do you find, because like me as a user, right? I've worked at different organizations where it's like 2-hour training, like video, and then every month or 2 months, and I've worked where it's like 5 minutes a week, and I'll tell you, I love the 5 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Bite-sized security awareness training, that seems to be a little more effective.
It's a great idea. I mean, you got to do it like algebra, right? If you sit down in a room for 2 hours and want to learn PEMDAS, you're gonna fail. Because I did, right? Every company that I've worked for in the past decade, one of the rules they have is don't be the reason that we get compromised. Make that part of your core requirements at organizations. These companies are spending millions of dollars to prevent it from happening. It should be a normal function. You could put it in a way like, yeah, MFA might be a pain in the butt for you, but would you rather get your paycheck on time, right? Like, put it into perspective like that. Like, make it real world, an example. Be like, this is an important part of your job. Just like you send a nice professional email and you make sure the words are spelled right, it's important to do that. These are normal practices that everybody should be doing today.
Users have to be incented. There are other opportunities that we've taken in terms of trying to explain to C-level folks that here's the impact. You have X amount of data that's confidential. If this gets breached and exposed, this is what your restitution costs are going to be. Are we okay with that? I think putting numbers against this sometimes help formulate that for that.
So the quantifying.
Yeah, if you can quantify it, there's ways to do it. You can build simulations to look at things like that. You can see the likelihood and the impact against that.
Just look at the Verizon data breach incident report.
There you go.
Your data's right there.
You can see there's empirical data to demonstrate to leadership this is what it will cost you if you have a breach.
Okay.
Something to think about.
We did some in-person one-on-one sit-downs with executives, but also generally stubborn people. And we showed them their own leaked credentials, their own threat intelligence, not just for work, but personal. Depends on if you can get them to agree to give over a personal email address, but the information is readily available. If you really explain like, hey, a hacker a week ago shared this password. Are you still using it? Yeah. We found about 20% of the time it would get someone to be like, all right, this is real, but it wasn't always effective. Executives are used to being treated special, and so I think that's constant security issue.
Well, that's a good point. I think one of the things we've done with the dark web is being able to scan and find credentials that are on the dark web, and then turning that around and going to that user and saying, the credentials have been found. Immediately change your password. Things like that help feed into the overall hygiene. But I think having empirical information like that helps drive that message a little bit harder.
And you mentioned there were some resources for that, right? Credentials on the dark web.
I mean, but we do that. So
Yeah.
we have a free
A free
personal
service.
service. Anyone could sign up. You could sign up your executives, assuming they're willing to
You're on the
be a part of that.
IT too, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, it's going to work for some, but not everyone. I've shown people their password that they are actively using. Some people just have a disconnect between security and what they choose to do. About 20% of the time, it did work.
When you talk about corporate credentials, if you're looking for a way to manage it, there's tools out there. We use a tool that has a bidirectional API to Okta, which is our IDP. When credentials are exposed via info stealer logs on the dark web, it'll disable and revoke the sessions of the user in Okta automatically. Maybe there's others out there doing it, but we've seen it trigger several times and it's helped us. It's also not cheap though, so it's not like an SMB tool.
No.
There is ways to manage it outside. Recorded features identity logging.
Yeah.
Does that account for like recaptured credentials, or how does it differentiate between what's stale and what's current?
If it's got an active session cookie, it'll do it.
If it's leaked, it'll
If it's
automatically
a cookie,
change.
or suspend the user, I should say.
If it's like a session that.
And if I understood you right, you're saying that you would even advise users of personal credentials?
Yeah, I think as much as you can.
Because I don't think everybody thinks about that, right?
Right.
What happened?
People are used to in a business setting thinking, oh, here's my work email, and that's pretty protective. The most effective was, no, let's talk about personal. Let's see what hackers are stealing about you personally. That 20-year-old Gmail account that you've had forever. Let's see what hackers have for that. Usually much more sensitive data, typically social security numbers, identity theft related items. And what you really want to do is to make it as personal and tangible as possible. It doesn't always have to be, hey, here's how it affects the business. It's like, you're one step away from identity theft and fraud. So maybe you should protect yourself for your own personal benefit.
The vulnerabilities of your personal life can become exposure to being targeted for corporate. So if you're not managing their use, now is that a problem with organizations that like, hey, I want to help manage your personal sort of thing? Is there pushback?
Yeah, legal doesn't like that.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
It's a problem, but it's no good solution. What I'm talking about does nothing for personal credentials.
Targeted.
It gets used immediately for business email compromise. It makes sense to sanitize.
Yeah.
We've even struggled telling organizations that have customers like, hey, that information's in the dark web, and they're like, it's not my company, it's not a user, I don't care. This is foothold into your server environment, and so most of them don't get it.
Another service critical infrastructure has is monitoring for dark web credentials, and they'll alert you, but they're not going to like automatically
Fix it, but still,
Yeah,
you know.
and that's free if you're critical infrastructure in South Carolina. So
Like you said, you don't think of critical infrastructure. It covers so many industries, right? Any other questions on that topic or thoughts? Okay. Just to wrap it up, we'll get to networking. So it was around initial access brokers, so identity. I know there's an identity expert here as well. And so feel free to chime in. And then ransomware as a service, right? Just 2 or 3 things that are simple that, we already talked about the zero trust guidance that's free. We all hate saying zero trust, right, because of the marketing. I get it. But this is a framework that CSA actually provides free. I hate saying the word too. But just 2 or 3 things. What are things I could do today that are easy, cost effective to reduce my risk threshold? That I may imagine I engage with you probably some good insight, and Andrew too. Like, do you have any thoughts on like hard-ended identity? That would be quick and easy?
I mean, like, sort of hard because we're like 30,000 plus employees, so you always have to be watching everybody doing, because a lot of them are doing dumb things, so it's just crazy, the kind of things that we see. They want us to make exceptions because there's got some website they want to go to, and then of course they downloaded something and blows up all of our alerting and stuff. So it's too much of that crap going on there. So we have to manage it, but it's not like everybody. There's always that small percentage of people who are the repeat offenders. And
Keep an eye on them.
yeah, you know, like you were saying, that you got to put wrappers around these people, just give them that extra bit of protection. You got to remove some of their permissions on things. Generally, it's just a day in, day out sort of thing that we do.
The unfortunate thing is there's policies that you have to build for those type of organizations. And we typically don't like doing that because it adds to the overall overhead for operations. But I think we're turning into that type of model of cybersecurity. It's not a one size fits all anymore. It's got to be very granular at that level. I don't think we've done that really well. I mean, I'm speaking from my experiences in LFIs that we still typically like to use the one size fits all. But I do think good hygiene around passwords, multi-factor. I get it. The user experience is great, but I think we're going to have to adopt that model eventually. That it's not about the user experience at some point.
Right.
It's about protecting the data.
It's being
The
operational.
more we get around that model, I think that's going to be the pathway for us. Just my thoughts.
A couple notes, just to tag on the MFA. For larger organizations, we've seen from a pen testing perspective, just a breakdown in process sometimes where they have MFA, but will crack maybe, 10, 20 passwords and 4 or 5 of the accounts haven't been enrolled in MFA. So we'll log in and it'll say, hey, that you've logged in and time to enroll in MFA. So we just enroll our phone in MFA and have access to the environment. There's some procedures that need to be put in place that, if somebody hasn't picked something up within 24 or 36 hours, it needs to automatically be disabled and they have to call back in and provide some identity. There are some breakdowns in the MFA process where people are pushing it out, set it, forget it, and then this person never comes to work or they never log in. We did talk a lot about network, but I would say the Google Workspace Entra ID of the world is very sloppy. A lot of organizations we look at aren't using some of the tools that are built in. They have cool tools you have to turn on, like conditional access policies. If you don't do business overseas, you get blocked. That's not to say it's gonna stop every attacker who can relay to something else. But if you can cut out 80% of the traffic, cut it out, right?
Yeah.
Just don't ignore the tools available in those products themselves. From an initial access perspective, I do think attackers are zeroing in on the cloud identity providers because a lot of people don't have as much experience with managing that as they do maybe with like on-prem Active Directory.
That plays into the whole shift to the cloud in terms of bringing to cloud providers. How do you micromanage that? Because it's still managed service, you still have to manage it. You can't take your hands off, and that's where I think we have to put more of that aspect of managing things more than we do today.
Cybersecurity isn't an end destination, right? It's a journey, and everybody's different. Everyone's got a different risk profile. Everyone's got a different business. Something I would really recommend is interviewing different security partners. Find who has your back, who can you trust, who can guide you. Maybe do a risk assessment with them. Sometimes those are free. They want to get their foot into the door. Look at things like, where is the risk? Where are the gaps? Where are the problems? Let's enforce good policy, right? Let's have MFA. Make your password a phrase, damn it. It should be long and it should be complex and it should be something that you can remember and change periodically. Do things like a pen test and go through that and learn. We now know in 2025 that your data is power. People want to get access to it, grab Bitcoin, get ransomware, and take control. We're seeing it happen all the time. This is a community. Reach out, talk to people, find out what would work well for your business. What might be really good for BMW and Michelin might not be great for United Community Bank, right? It's all different for everybody. You got to figure out where your risk is, where you're vulnerable, and work with a good partner that's got your back and can guide you along your journey.
I think we're all lucky to be in security right now because every year is the best year for ransomware. We all became incredibly important in the last few years. If you read SEC filings, almost every new SEC filing mentions cybersecurity when they used to not. We're seeing ransomware go from a technique to being a whole new sub-industry of cybercrime, and it's growing like crazy. I think the biggest thing we can do is do a tabletop exercise. Let's pretend that your organization just got hit by ransomware. Pick a random data set and then go through how you would respond. What we're learning is that a lot of these organizations not only don't know how to respond, but they respond in a very poor way, especially around communication. It's not if you're going to get hit by ransomware, it's when. And you should have a plan and a policy in place so that you handle it the best way possible. Beyond the basics, we just have to stay up to date on the new techniques. We heard about Move It as Clop was infecting people. That didn't mean they stopped. We're hearing about other 0 days being exploited. Pay attention to what those are and then see if you have them, right? If you have vulnerable infrastructure, have a plan for how you can quickly shut that down so that you're not another one of the victims. I think it's going to be very exciting this year to see what ransomware does. The techniques are evolving every day, and we just have to pay attention to those as they evolve.
I just want to tag on one thing to what you said with the tabletops. For smaller organizations, you want to keep it combined, but for larger organizations, we found a lot of effectiveness splitting into a technical and an executive tabletop, where you can really focus on things like the communications and how we're going to communicate with customers and things like that. And the IT folks sometimes glaze over. You could go into the network controls and logging with the technical people where maybe the executive team's not as interested. It just seems to keep them engaged a little better and focused in different areas. So it's just something to look
Back to that executive question, right? What about something as simple as like a small business ever have a IR retainer? Because when stuff goes down, right?
I would, I mean, I'm not trying to torpedo anybody's business, but
Yeah.
the IR industry's really been dominated by insurance right now.
Yeah.
You can't do anything from an incident response perspective unless you're engaged with your insurance provider, or you could damage your coverage. Other people may have different perspectives, but I think a lot of the IR companies are aligning with insurance.
They're sitting on the committee.
I think most businesses have cyber insurance. I hope all of us have cyber insurance. How many people have written a claim? Do you have a templated claim ready to go to insurance? Like, what we can do is we can prepare for when it happens, and let's take some things off the table. Like, here's what we send to insurance when we have an incident, instead of having to draft it up from scratch.
Another thing I'd say is their insurance policies should be treated as protected information, right? Because that's what ransomware actors are looking for when they're in your environment. They want to know how much your insurance is going to pay out. That's probably what your ransom is going to be if they found that file. So try to keep that close to the hip.
And if you're a security professional and you're not aware of your insurance policy, you need to review it, because you may have somebody that's filling it out and checking boxes that you really shouldn't be checking. I have seen that before, where somebody had an incident and filled something out incorrectly, and they were scared to make a claim because they didn't have the protection mechanism they claimed to have on the insurance form. From a technical perspective, you want to be involved and make sure you're completing it with somebody on the finance side.
Expect the claim to be denied. That's what insurance does. It's an appeals process. Be mentally prepared, or even better, have an operating procedure for what you're going to do in this event, because the less that it's hair on fire, let's just react, the better.